Goodbye, old man. We fought our last together. You've struggled bravely, but you've got to die. Old man, it almost breaks my heart to leave you, without one word, except goodbye. Goodbye, old man. We've kept up well together, and always shared whatever's come our way. We came to help old Britain fight the Germans, and up to now, we've kept them well at bay. Goodbye, old man. I know you're going to suffer, for there are great tears in your eyes. I wish you understood that it is for Britain that every fights and bleeds and dies. Goodbye, old man. You won't be here much longer. You've got to go, old man, and go alone. We've always had our troubles both together. And life won't seem the same when you are gone. Goodbye, old man. I wish that you could answer and tell me all your brown eyes tried to say. You know, old man, I've seen a lot of suffering, but never felt just like I feel today. Goodbye, old friend. He lay there in the dross of war, beyond all hope and pain. His legs were broke, his wounds did bleed. The soldier called him noble steed, and put a bullet through his brain. Then the soldier, kneeling down, bent his head and cried, You were the noblest beast of all, did your duty, answered the call, and I am filled with grateful pride. Through all the charges you carried me, and never did you falter. Though bullets whistled past your side, and many men and horses died, your peace would never alter. And so, my friend, this is goodbye. I've done my best for you. I've sent you to a safer place, where horses graze in gentle grace, and I wish I could go too. Then in the sky above all noise, we heard a singing lark. It felt it was an angel's song, and knew his life would not be long, as the sniper's bullet hit its mark. They found them lying side by side, a soldier and his noble steed. What sacrifice by man and beast, too high a price to pay for peace, more than God and man agreed. I was pulled from my field, from my work, from my play, never again to see England in lands far away. Through death and destruction, through blood, sweat and tears, I carried my master, along with my peers. So I ask you to remember a while, along with the soldiers in smart rank and file. Remember our beauty, the strength of our kind, as we gallop through danger without care to mind. For we were horses thrust into war, and we gave up our lives for your peace evermore. He whinnied low as I passed by. It was a pleading sort of cry. His rider, slain while going back, lay huddled on the muddy track. And he, without a guiding hand, had strayed out on the boggy land, and held there by a treacherous mire, lay exposed to shrapnel fire. He was a wiry chestnut steed, a type of good Australian breed. Perhaps on good Monero's height, he'd followed in the wild steer's flight, or out beyond the great divide, roam free where saltbush plains are wide, or through the golden wattle groves, had rounded up the sheep in droves, then shipped away to feed the guns, and help the boys to strafe the Huns. His load was 18-pounder shells, the sort that in a barrage tells. I drew the shells from out their sheath, and cut his girth from underneath, then lifted off his saddle pack, to ease the weight and free his back. His muzzle softly nosed my hand, because I seemed to understand. My steel hat from an old-time trench, I filled 3 times his thirst to quench. I brought my ration biscuits back, and fed him from my haversack. No horse that has been stable fed more proudly tossed his chestnut head, because a stranger saw his need, and passing stayed to give him feed. But time pressed on, I must not stay. 4 weary miles before me lay. He made a gallant bid to rise, then sank with almost human sighs. I hoped a team might see his plight, and draw him out before the night. Now you may ask, why in this strife, when times were grim and death was rife? I should have ventured from my course, to try and help a battery horse. I'll tell you, I felt his need. I've owned and loved a chestnut steed. taken from cloven fields, where skylark and grouse linger, into the bows of a troopship. No scent of morning dew, no bird song, only sweat and urine. And the distant sounds of war, no light, no grass of home, only the whip. For he is bound for Flanders field, his rider glorious in his regalia, sword in hand. He was his master now, and the horse's salvation. Kindness, a quiet word, an apple, their bond complete. His last feed bathed in a red sun, which hovered above the morning mist hiding yesterday's sin. For this is the place where death is king and reason is lost. This day where man throws sacrifice to the gods, like so much sour grain crushed and discarded, to a blow away into the winds of time, recorded by nations into the ledgers of loss. For now it is time. The lines gather, then the slow trot, their proud heads restrained, their mouths foaming on the bit. These beasts of burden knowing no fear, a sight worthy of Valhalla. Their trust in man galloping where heroes dare not go. Onward, onward they gallop. Row on row into the fog. No grass here, only mud and wire, waiting for the day's cull. This place, man's ultimate betrayal. Onward, onward, nostrils flare, eyes wide, steam rising from his flanks, every muscle straining for the next stride. Then the stumble, a moment's recovery, blood pours from his proud neck, then the ground. His head rose, a hand strokes his brow, the last kindness. A wavered shot ushers his life away, like so many before. No one will weep for you, my warhorse, no letter home. There'll be no mention in dispatches, no memorial, for you are just an animal, sacrificed on the altar of man, left to rot in Flanders field. But for those precious moments, he was more than man. This day of all days, he kept his bond, did not flinch, though death was all around. Galloped blindly through the death rattle of the guns, face on. No retreat, onward, onward. The magnificence of the horse, no equal, never forget. For it is the shame of a nation, a sin of mankind, to undo the hand of God. No glory here, only an empty cup left on the altar of insanity. Taken from cloven fields, where the skylark and grouse linger. For I will weep for you, my noble friend, my warhorse, you magnificent beast. I spoke to you in whispers, as shells made the ground beneath us quake. We both trembled in that crater, a toxic, muddy, bloody lake. I spoke to you and pulled your ears, to try and quell your fearful eye, as bullets whizzed through the raindrops, and we watched the men around us die. I spoke to you in stable tones, a quiet, tranquil voice. At least I volunteered to fight. You didn't get to make the choice. I spoke to you of old times. Perhaps you went before the plough, and pulled the hay cart from the meadow, far from where we're dying now. I spoke to you of grooming, of when the ploughman made you shine, not the shrapnel wounds and bleeding flanks, mane filled with mud and wire and grime. I spoke to you of courage, as gas filled the Flanders air, watched you struggle in the mud, harness acting like a snare. I spoke to you of peaceful fields, grazing beneath a setting sun, time to rest your torn and tired body, your working day is done. I spoke to you of promises, if from this maelstrom I survive, by pen and prose and poetry, I'll keep your sacrifice alive. I spoke to you of legacy, from when this hellish time is through, all those who hauled or charged or carried will be regarded heroes too. I spoke to you in dulcet tones. Your eye told me you understood. As I squeezed my trigger to bring you peace, the only way I could, and I spoke to you in whispers. They sat in the dust, the tall, gaunt young men, the no-nonsense men from Australia. They sat by their giant and thirsty good steeds, without sword or lance or regalia. Across the plain there, just 3 miles or more, were cannon, machine gun and rifle, and dealing out death to the mounted young men would be only a few minutes' trifle. So they fought these hardened and old-fashioned men, for whom war was the customary life, day after day down the centuries long, since they fought with the club and the knife. But a new man was out there across the dry sands. He could meet any hardship with humour, and the men of the old world knew nothing of him, and they thought it must be a rumour, that troops from an unknown and far southern land could storm to Gallipoli's height, and all but devour the untakeable hill to win the unwinnable fight. Oh, they hated the war, the men from the south, and each breast beat the heart of a rover, as they dreamed of their friendly, wide brown land in peace, muttering, "Let's get this bloody thing over." Their horses were restive and dry with the heat. They'd been far too long without water. To the soldiers they were more than just mounts, they were mates, and for mates the light horse would face slaughter. To hell with the numbers, to hell with the guns, it's too hot here to flaming well think. And beg of their desert, said Digger, let's go, our horses will die without drink. Harry Chevelle summed up the position. His men were all rested and ready. Victoria's 4th and New South Wales 12th determined, courageous and steady. The chiefs on the hill were now forced to decide. The light would be presently gone. Balaclava itself was a much shorter dash, and some said it cannot be done. But General Grant took another good look at strong horses and great-hearted men. I feel they can do it, Harry, he said. Said Harry, let's jump to it then. Across the wide plain nestled Abraham's Wells, and before them the hell and the strife. But Lawson and Hyman set off at the trot, at the head of men careless of life. Their tempers were up, they were sick of the war, the old world with its blunder and error. But never before in its story so long had it seen such a thundering terror. The guns opened up, and the shrapnel flew wide, but the horsemen were too far away. In the enemy's hearts the most awful fear grew, and they knew they'd remember this day. The men from each side of the Murray, on their high snowy whales thundering closer, in the trenches all panic and flurry. They'll stop and dismount, came an officer's shout. They can't fight with a fine cavalry. So stay at your posts and your trenches all safe, and just pick off his poor infantry. They'll tire and halt, they cannot gallop so far. No horseman can take these defences. They're out in the open, all weaponless too. They can't fight till they get to our trenches. But a weapon they had that the Turk couldn't know, and it lay in the strength and the speed of the finest horse flesh the world ever saw, the mighty Australian bush steed. We're under the guns, a light horseman cried out, as his heartbeat went double the pace, and his mount galloped faster, determined and strong. Oh, never was such a race. They're still coming, they're mad, but we will stop them all yet. This menace be suddenly gone. Then the dying sun flashed on each fixed bayonet, and the horses rushed awesomely on. A riot of fear now down in the trench. The light horsemen saw flashing the lights. As the rifles spat fury right over their heads, they'd forgotten to lower their sights. Now into the trenches the light horsemen plunged. Their bayonets and bullets worked well. The enemy strong demoralised now by the men who'd come at them through hell. Beersheba was won. The whole war was cut short, and the feathered brown hat shone in glory. When the pens write of war now, they tell of the charge that cannot be left from the story. But the whalers were left, and sent riders in tears as they boarded the ships to come home. Left to see out their days in Palestine's sands, no more on their snowies to roam. Ah, the dust of the battle had settled long since, or has it? The warfare's not done. Where tyranny tramps and greed is dug in, so the struggle for justice goes on. And this land in the south can still teach the world, can still have the spotlighted part. But we must keep the flag of the light horse unfurled, and their courage keep strong in our heart. Only a dying horse, pull off the gear, and slip the needless bit from frothing jaws. Drag it aside there, leave the roadway clear. The battery thunders on with scarce a pause. Prone by the shell-swept highway there it lies, with quivering limbs, as fast the life tide fails. Dark films are closing over the faithful eyes, that mutely plead for aid where none avails. Onward the battery roll, but won their speeds, heedless of comrade's voice or bursting shell. back to the wounded friend who lonely bleeds, beside the stony highway where it fell. Only a dying horse, he swiftly kneels, lifts a limp head and hears a shivering sigh, kisses his friend, while down his cheek there steals sweet pity's tear. Goodbye, old man, goodbye. No honours wait him, medal, badge or star, though scarce could war a kindlier deed unfold. He bears within his breast, more precious far, beyond the gifts of kings, a heart of gold. Shrill neighing horses, terrified on battlefields, harnessed to big guns, eyes wide with fright, pulling through clinging mud. Proud animals, spirits broken, treated as beasts of burden, moving ammunition, guns and shells, abused and whipped, supplying the trenches of hell. No respite nor mercy, slaughtered by enemy fire, dreaming of green fields of home, cantering free and joyful, without terror of man's war.